Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. Today is Tuesday, January the 20th, 2026, amidst what can only be described as a big shift in West Asia's geopolitical map. The headlines are moving faster than the ink can dry on the 14-point integration agreement signed a few days ago between Syria's self-appointed president, Ahmad al-Sharaa, better known as Jolani and the SDF. But as we speak, reports are surfacing that the Damascus talks have collapsed and the fragile ceasefire is being tested by violent clashes in the north. Our focus today is the alarming situation in the north and northeast of Syria, especially the prisons of ISIS, where the Syrian Interior Ministry led by Jolani confirmed a mass escape of ISIS detainees during the security handover. Many of them have escaped. We don't know exactly the numbers. We're looking also at the Raqqa handover and the transition of the Deir ez-Zor oil fields. Is this a so-called alleged seamless integration, as U.S. Special Envoy Tom Barrack suggested, or are we witnessing the total capitulation of the Kurdish-led forces? Joining me today to make sense of these fast-moving developments is award-winning journalist Lindsey Snell, who has been tracking the U.S. policy shifts and the ground realities of the SDF's exposed positions. She has been multiple times in the SDF-held territories. She reported from there, and she documented different developments on the ground. We will dissect what people call the betrayal of the US for the Turks, the role of Turkey, and what the 2026 so-called Syrian Unity Cabinet means for the country's minorities. By the way, guys, this is an independent journalistic analysis for educational and documentary purposes. If you value this depth of research, please hit the like button, subscribe, and consider supporting our platform. Lindsey, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that you dedicated your time today for us. I think your insight would be very valuable for me and for the audience of Syriana Analysis. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
Lindsey, let's start with what happened a few ago. In a matter of few hours, the HTS of the Jolani forces crossed the river. They have crossed to Raqqa almost easily, let's say. Were you surprised? Did you anticipate that the Americans would green light the Jolani forces to advance? And do you think this was an American green light to begin with?
I was surprised by the quickness, by the speed, and by how far they went. And I think that really they're taking sort of a note from Erdogan and pushing as far as they can. I don't think the Americans greenlit as far as they went. And I think that that's why there's been some delay. And just recently, I think Jolani apparently said that the SDF now has 4 additional days to discuss terms before agreeing to the 12-point agreement. So I don't think the Americans gave the green light for them to go as far as they did, but I don't think that there have been real consequences for what they did. And I think that the real issue is what we've seen in the last 2 days with ISIS detainees, especially today with Al-Hol camp, which Al-Hol at its peak in 2019 had 70,000 associates of ISIS members living there, foreign and Syrian and Iraqi. Now it has closer to 30,000, but that's still so many dangerous people who are just going to be unleashed if they're allowed to escape.
Yes, 30,000 is almost the same number of what HTS used to have, like 40,000 during the days of Idlib. This is an army by itself. And these people share similar ideology to the people who are carrying out the fight for Jolani on the ground. We have seen also emblems of ISIS basically on the shoulders. Today, when these forces were advancing in Raqqa and in Hasakeh, I mean, do you anticipate that these ISIS elements would join the HTS government?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that plenty of ISIS remnants have already joined Jolani's government. They joined when Jolani was HTS. I mean, they've joined since. And it's just naive to think that people who are in the prisons and the camps wouldn't end up joining. When women would successfully escape from Al-Hol camp, because Al-Hol, remember, a lot of foreign women, wives and children of ISIS fighters, and then a lot of men also, Syrian and Iraqi men who are associates of ISIS, so maybe not combatants themselves, but sympathized with ISIS or moved around with ISIS. So when women would successfully escape, their destination would be Turkey or Idlib. If it was Idlib, they were going because they wanted to integrate into HTS, which is now the Syrian government. So I think it's just a matter of time before we see a lot more ISIS in the new Syrian government, in the new Syrian army. And the way that the Syrian government, HTS, talks about the Kurds, the Alawites, the Druze, the sectarian hatred, they don't have this hatred for ISIS because they're Sunni and they're mostly Arab. So
Yes.
they're incredibly accepting of ISIS compared to any other minority in Syria.
I mean, Lindsey, I'm sure you've seen some of the comments of the Jolani supporters on my own X account. I am in their eyes not a Syrian, and I am in their eyes a refugee. Although my ancestors arrived over 100 years ago in Syria, I'm a third generation. I was born and raised there. I'm just trying to bring this example because what you said is completely true. In their eyes, I am not a Syrian. I don't deserve to stay in the country. And the same thing goes for the Kurds, for the Alawites, for the Druze. And this goes back in history. If people do not really understand what happened, for example, 800 years ago with Ibn Taymiyyah and the revolutionary teachings of him, especially that the guy literally said that the religious minorities in Islam are more dangerous than the Christians and the Jews, and they have to fight against them. And now we see fighters of Jolani on the periphery of Al-Hol camp. They're basically cheering and welcoming the ISIS, like they're saying, we came for you, basically. And this is something important because many people ask about Al-Qaeda and ISIS as if it's just an organization. It's a mentality. You can be a civilian and you still be an ISIS, right? Because you believe in the ideology of ISIS. Therefore, all these officials in the Jolani government who are championing this type of policies, in my opinion, they are resembling what ISIS has done a decade ago against Syria and against Iraq. So when you have a mentality like ISIS governing in Damascus, and you see the trumpets of Jolani on social media platforms, on the media outlets, talking on TV, on Al-Ikhbariyya TV, on official TV, basically, and they're repeating the ISIS narrative, how can we believe as observers, I'm not talking as a Syrian now, as an observer, how can I believe that the end goal of the United States in Syria is stability when this mentality is governing Syria?
Of course not. I mean, anyone with the most basic understanding of Syria, the situation on the ground, would know what would happen, and would know what would happen if Jolani's forces got near ISIS detainees. I mean, I see comments, people are saying, oh, but they never had a fair trial, so we don't even know if they're really ISIS. And that's going to be the prevailing mentality, and I'm sure that's the mentality that the Jolani regime is also going to be pushing forward, is that maybe the SDF just unjustly captured all of these people, and most of them aren't ISIS. So we're going to see more of that. And yeah, I mean, there's no question that anything the Jolani forces have done in the past few days have just created a situation of pure chaos. And they've sown uncertainty, and they've just had so much of their own media, propaganda media. And these are guys I remember from back in my days of embedding with the Free Syrian Army in 2013, 14, and 15, who were journalists that were embedded with these organizations, and now they're embedded with Jolani. And they're considered legitimate by not just Arab media, but also Western media. Like, these are journalists on the ground, and some of them are carrying guns, and they're all just parroting what the Jolani regime is telling them to parrot. And it's really disturbing.
Indeed. And nowadays we see the talking heads on Syrian national TV, for example, because from time to time I watch what they say, and the guests they host and the journalists they quote, especially when they have a guest. It's really troubling to see really uneducated people, let's say, and I'm not speaking about baccalaureate education or university education. I'm talking about a level of absurdity, of radicalism on national TV, basically, when they speak about everything that is going on in the country. And this is an official line of the government. Therefore, I'm still troubled to understand if truly the goal is of the Americans is stability. Because Tom Barrack, what is Tom Barrack? Tom Barrack says that we need a centralized government in Damascus with absolute authorities. So they're trying to bring a new dictatorship in the country. And at the same time, they want for this government to make peace with the communities. But this peace or alleged stability is coming with excessive violence against the Syria's ethnic and religious minorities. So truly, I'm troubled to understand if the Americans really mean it when they say we want stability in Syria. Because see, the regional powers, in my opinion, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, UAE, those are all looking into investments in the country. So it could be in their interest for the situation to be a little bit stable, so for them to invest, they have big opportunities. But at the same time, they are betting on this black horse that is called Jolani. That is, for me, it's difficult to understand because there have been lots of other candidates who are not with Al-Qaeda mindset. And now in the US administration, we have the likes of Lindsey Graham. They're calling for they're attacking or criticizing the Jolani regime after this attack against the Kurds. And at the same time, Tom Barrack says that they're moving into stability. What is happening in the US, in your understanding, when it comes to the Syria foreign policy making? Is there a consistent policy or they are confused?
I think that there are different camps. And I think that's a really big issue now. So Tom Barrack, obviously, we know who he's supporting. And Tom Barrack is, if you look at his past, he was indicted for being an unregistered agent of the UAE. And that was a business arrangement. And it stands to reason that anything he's doing in the region is pushing for more business arrangements. We know that the Gulf wants to invest more in Syria. We know that they want the coast. And maybe they want a completely unified Syria under Jolani. Maybe they want the Kurds out. Maybe that's just a variable that they don't want in the country. But at the same time, the army and, the Operation Inherent Resolve Task Force, the so-called coalition, they obviously, I think, at a core level do support the SDF. I don't think that their support means much because they're not given the ability to really help them, but I think they do support them. And you can tell from Graham's tweets last night, like they're getting outdated information or incomplete information. They don't know what's going on. It's just no one has a really good granular view on the situation in Syria. It's really disturbing. I think that, I think a lot of it is just like a lack of consensus. There was a Wall Street Journal article that was just hours before the Jolani forces began to push into Raqqa. And it was like, we talked to these US officials. One official said maybe they're just going to, take out everything west of the Euphrates. One said maybe they'll push in more. One said maybe all of the Kurdish areas in northeast Syria are at risk. And it's just like there's no consensus even to get like a clear quote for an article. It's just like no one knows what the hell is going on and no one agrees. And that's US policy in Syria in a nutshell, I think.
Lindsey, in the past decade, you followed me, I followed you on social media platforms. We agreed, we disagreed on many things. I was on politically opposite side of SDF. Politically, I have never wished the Kurds any harm. I just thought that their strategy or being embedded with the United States is not a good approach for entire Syria. Now that this scenario is unfolding in front of our eyes, do you think that there was something could be done, let's say, from the SDF side to avoid this scenario? And do you think this is the worst case scenario that was anticipated or not anticipated, let's say, for the Kurds? Because in my eyes, when I see the footage coming now from northeast Syria, it is heart-itching. It is something that is no human being could tolerate to see. Men, women, and children are being decapitated. Eyes are gouged out. It's truly barbarism and sadism what they're doing against the Kurds. And me as Syrian, the Kurds are my companions in the country. I reject this type of violence against them, and I reject to force them to be included in any type of, let's say, governance, whether it's centralized or decentralized. Nothing could happen through force. But on the leadership level of the Kurds, was there something that they could have done diplomatically with the US or other regional powers, for example, to avoid this scenario?
I honestly don't think so. And I don't think so because I don't think any entity, the US, Assad, Russia, no one wanted Kurds to have autonomy permanently the way that, the SDF wants to, that the self-administration wants to in northeast Syria. And that's a problem. I think that Turkey and Russia negotiated with each other a lot in Syria and in Libya. And we would see these things play out where something would happen in Syria and then we'd see the opposite thing happen in Libya, especially with all the estimated mercenaries in Libya. I'm talking like 2020, 2021. I think that if the SDF had cooperated more with Assad and Russia, it's entirely likely that Assad would have fallen faster. Russia didn't want to stay in Syria and prop up Assad. So then you have this Kurdish force that's now Assad remnants instead of being called PKK terrorists. And maybe there would have been massacres even faster. Maybe it would have been a coastal situation in northeast Syria. And I think that they did, to some extent, deal with Russia and deal with Assad in 2019, when the U.S. told the SDF to remove their border defenses around Ras Al-Ain and Tel Abyad, and had these joint patrols with Turkey, which were essentially Turkish reconnaissance missions, like just scoping out the SDF's territory. And then suddenly Turkey attacked, and the US was so surprised by it and so appalled by it, but did nothing to stop it. It was just incursions. And then, Ras Al-Ain and Tel Abyad are now Turkish occupied. Russia and the Assad regime stepped in to fill a security vacuum in parts of Ain Issa and parts of Kobani. And that's why these places didn't entirely fall. So I think that there was cooperation, and I think that more cooperation would have just been a faster end. Yes. And obviously America never had the intention of giving them autonomy. I don't think that America promised that, but I think America probably dangled enough carrots to make something seem plausible.
This is something that is important, and when you mentioned Russia, and this is not a secret. I mean, everybody understood in the past years that Russia and Iran were exerting maximum pressure on Assad to reconcile with Erdogan, and this would have definitely reflected negatively on the Kurds in northeast of Syria. I find still hard time to understand the logic driving this policy of Tehran and Moscow being so adamant on persuading Assad in the past years to shake hands with Erdogan, give him electoral victory by giving him some photo ops, for example, to the extent that they cut even financial support to Syria, both Russia and Iran. Iran stopped fuel transfers for 3 months. The country was paralyzed because they wanted Assad to shake hands. Now Assad is gone. We're not discussing that era, but I'm still trying to understand what is the logic behind propping up Erdogan this much in the region. Meanwhile, this guy is professionally playing both sides with the Americans, with the Russians, with the Iranians, some eggs here, some eggs there. He's really playing smart for himself, the least to say, and he's achieving points in the region. Now, the entire north mostly is under his influence. The Southern Caucasus, he has stepped in through the victory over the Nagorno-Karabakh and Artsakh, Armenians, and they want to open this corridor that connects them with Azerbaijan. So on the long run, I don't see Turkish entrenchment is basically in the interest of Iran and Russia. Meanwhile, these two countries are so much invested in imperial Turkey under Erdogan.
Yeah, it never made sense to me either. And I remember the Syrian mercenary factions that were protesting when it was suggested that maybe Assad and Erdogan would meet. There were mass protests over that. And yeah, it's always been bizarre. Maybe it's a matter of like opening the country to more business interests. No idea. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what you said, Erdogan is just, he must be absolutely thrilled. He's going to get exactly what he wants in Syria. He's getting what he wants from Armenia. That corridor is going to be a security. I know we're not talking about Armenia, but that corridor is going to be security death for Armenia. It's an absolute disaster. And Pashinyan is rolling out the red carpet for it, and Erdogan and Azerbaijan, and by extension Russia, or by extension Israel, because Israel, of course, is Azerbaijan's like #1 ally in the region. They're just going to be thrilled. Everything is going their way.
So, and in Syria, like, are the Israelis bothered now with this development in northeast Syria? How are they watching this from Israel? So I don't know if this is correct or not. One of the officials in SDF said that they're in touch with Israel, or please explain to us what is the situation.
The only real official commentary from Israel, as far as I know, has been the foreign minister retweeting a CENTCOM tweet, which wasn't even, it was just like a vague CENTCOM tweet, sort of telling everyone to stop, to de-escalate. They've done nothing. And I'm sure that the SDF is in touch with Israel and has been. I don't think that's ever materialized into any sort of real support or real effect on US policy or anything else. Because I don't think Israel has any interest in these areas or any interest in the SDF as a force. They want the South, they want Sweda, they want the Druze, and they have that. They're going to annex what they want, and that's not going to be the northeast of Syria. That's Turkey's. And I think that there's sort of like a secret hands-off policy between Turkey and Israel. Like, Turkey, take whatever the hell you want in the northeast. Israel, take whatever you want in the south. They're sort of cooperating almost.
Yeah. So this came after 10 days around 10 days of the Paris meeting, right, between Shibani, Israelis, Turks, French, and the Americans. And Shibani comes back. 48 hours later, the attack happens in Aleppo against Sheikh Mahsoud and Ashrafiyeh. The timing is so not coincidental. And this reminds me of the attack on Sweda when the Sharaa officials and Israelis met in Baku. He came, and the second day the attack on Sweda happened. Back in the day, I thought probably that was a trap from the Israelis telling him that it is possible for him to take over Sweda. And then when he attacked the Sweda, the Israelis intervened and imposed a new reality in Sweda over the Druze. But now in the north and northeast of Syria, is it possible that finally the Israelis and the Turks have set like deconflicting lines that Turkey can have its upper hand over the north, and then Israelis would have their upper hand over the south? So what has remained from the Syrian statehood in this case? What sovereignty has left in Syria?
I mean, there is no Syrian state. It's Turkey, it's Israel, and it's America. And, you know, from a financial perspective, it's the Gulf, because obviously we know that Qatar is now subsidizing a lot of the Syrian government, which is hilarious because Qatar, as we know, paid for Jabhat al-Nusra, the Al-Qaeda affiliate. So it's just like they're still funding the same people, except now we're calling it the Syrian government. I mean, it really does seem that Turkey and Israel are not. I mean, I think that everything that they say about each other is theatrical. Erdogan, oh, Armenian genocide, he kills the Kurds. They don't give a fuck. Israelis didn't, you know, recognize the Armenian genocide in any official capacity. It's just, it's pure theater. And Israel has been uncharacteristically quiet about this set of attacks, which is even more suspicious.
Is telling a lot. And Israel also assisted Azerbaijan in the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians in Artsakh, and you have also documented this. I think many people have to open their eyes, especially, this is a message for guys, if you're from Syria, if you're Syrian and you're from one of the minorities, I have told you from the day one of the regime change, don't bet on Israel. Israel and other powers do not care about your well-being in Syria, and they are using you as a lever in the country. And in the south, that is different, as also Lindsey mentioned, in Sweda, because of the geographical proximity, because of the Druze living inside the occupied Golan Heights and other places. So there is some demographic and geopolitical factors at play. But many people, for example, in the coast started saying, let's also do the same thing like the Druze have done. And I said, you do whatever you like to do, because you're at gunpoint in Syria, and I'm in no way or shape to come and dictate you what not to do. But be careful, because what the Israelis have done since the regime change, I assure you, they have paid many influencers to peddle this, and I have seen the patterns on social media. I myself was approached. So I have to be very honest with you guys. This is something that you have to be careful as well.
You were approached?
Yeah, I was approached. Wow. I was approached by an Israeli, and he claimed to be an individual, not representing anyone, but he was speaking with plural, like he was, we will support your work and we will amplify your work. What we need basically is for you to tone down your rhetoric against Israel and promote this alliance between, they are portraying it as an alliance between Israel and the minorities in Syria, and they would support my work even financially. And I have been approached several times, and I even didn't open, let's say, my messages until this person went to Patreon, where my followers support me, and he became a patron so he can send me a DM. So he paid money to send me a DM. And I explained this to you guys already on this channel, and I told you this story, and they offered me support for this channel. And I assume that they do the same thing for many other people. But for myself, you know my position about Israel, and I would never, ever get a penny from them, and not from any other side. This channel is independent, thanks to you guys. So, and Israel, in my opinion, has played an instrumental role in the destabilization of Syria and the outcome that we see nowadays. So at one point, you support Jolani, you receive their fighters, you give them medical support, and sometimes you give them light weapons and cash money in the south when they occupied the border crossing with the Golan Heights. You play a double game for tactical reasons. And then you claim that this is a jihadi taken over the country, so you can intervene further and occupy more territories in the country, including presenting yourself as a savior of minorities. Excuse me, I'm not an idiot. Maybe you can other people, but not me.
Actually,
Lindsey,
since you say that, I had like Knesset members, Israeli politicians, in my Instagram DMs during the massacres in Sweden. Like, I really love your work. Maybe we can collaborate together and things like that. And just, you love my work. Have you not seen my work? I don't support Israel. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll just weaponize whatever they can.
I mean, for them, it is important on social media platforms to have influential platforms peddling certain rhetoric. And then you see that this script has been distributed, and then few people at the same time pushing the same words and certain terminologies, which creates suspicion if these people are really independent or not. It's not my job, but anyways, it's happening, guys. Just be careful about these things. Lindsey, today is something very interesting. Yesterday, actually, the Syrian Ministry of Endowment. So, guys, this is the ministry which is organizing the religious affairs in Syria. So they published a statement, basically. This is the statement. So Syria's Minister of Endowments, Mohammed Abul Khair Shukri, has issued a religious directive urging mosques across the country to celebrate what he described as conquests and victories by Damascus-aligned forces in eastern Syria, an apparent reference to ongoing clashes with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. So in a letter dated January 18, Shukri called on imams nationwide to recite Qunut Nazila during all 5 daily prayers and to pray for the success of the Syrian soldiers, Jolani forces. The directive opens with the verse 6 of Surah Al-Anfal from the Holy Quran. I did some research about this today, and it is really troubling because these conquests usually in the Islamic literature was used by either when they used to attack enemy territory, those were non-Muslims outside the caliphate, or when they were defending themselves against foreign invaders. The people they're fighting today are not outsiders. Those are Syrian Kurds, and they're Muslims. So even theologically and in Islamic literature, what they're doing is distorting religion itself.
And it was apparently a precursor to attacks on the Kurds, to some of the Saddam Hussein era massacres against the Kurds, which is especially disturbing because, I mean, not just now in the time of Jolani, but in SNA held territories in Syria, you would see Saddam Hussein on the back of cars, on posters, sometimes next to Abu Amsha, next to Jolani. So they still lionize him very much. They still hold him up as a figure of greatness, as a great leader. And so it really calls into question how these people are going to have an inclusive society that includes a really big Kurdish population. It's just not possible.
Yeah. So in this case, the Kurds in their eyes are outsiders, and that's the point. And outsiders, what do we do to the outsiders under such circumstances? You give them the chance to become one of them, or you kill them. So there is no third way in this, and that is something that, in my opinion, for the Kurds, is going to create one of the two scenarios. Either they will live subjugated, like during historically the Kurds were subjugated or humiliated many times by the rulers, or they will fight back. what do you think is going to be like the map of control I'm seeing? I mean, Kobani is now surrounded. Ain al-Arab Kobani is completely surrounded. And have they pushed inside Hasakeh already or not? I don't
They
know.
not in the city proper. I don't think they're on the outskirts though. Definitely they're in the province. So I think that it's going to be fight back. It's definitely going to be fight back. And this is what Kurdish leaders are saying. This is what Abdi said. This is what, the spokesman of the SDF said. They're giving civilians are taking up arms to defend themselves from Jolani because they know at this point there's no question. They don't expect the Americans to come and save them. They don't expect Israel to come and save them. They know that they're on their own and they're going to fight back, even if that means a brutal death. And unfortunately, with the Jolani regime, that could very well be what it means.
Wouldn't this be an opportunity, Lindsey, for other powers to step in and weigh in and support the Kurds? Like, I mean, I think the terrifying scenario for the Americans and the Israelis would be if some of the hostile players of them in the region would intervene in support of the Kurds in this case. So the situation would be flipped because the Americans are not going to support the Kurds now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a question of how much time there is to do anything at this point. If the Jolani regime, especially with Turkish backing, with Bayraktars and other Turkish support that might not be overt but is definitely there, they're undoubtedly more powerful and more populous than the SDF. There's no question who is going to win that fight if they're full force against the SDF and the civilians that are trying to stand their ground in northeast Syria. So it's a question of, is there time even for a new power to step in and help them? And what would that look like?
No, time-wise, I don't think they have the privilege of the time to form new alliances in the region, but definitely if they stand their ground and they fight back and resist for, let's say, a few weeks, then the situation for them could change, because I believe that there are definitely players in the region who do not like to see Jolani stabilize the country through massacres and ethnic cleansing, right?
Absolutely. I think China said something today, I think, sort of condemnatory of the Jolani regime.
I mean, the Chinese side is sometimes also is when I see what happened in Syria in the past 14 years and how much this will impact China and the Silk and Road Initiative with the Uyghurs in the country and the emboldenment of Turkey, one of the sponsors of the Islamic Turkestan Army, or the main sponsor of the Islamic Turkestan Army. I ask lots of questions about the intentions, or what can they do, or what could they have done in the past. For example, the money that was paid for the Chinese and the Russians to deliver weapons to Syria, and they never reached. So you're talking about deals were done and the money was paid, but then the Russians and the Chinese didn't deliver these weapons to Syria, and I'm talking about the previous state. Although these elements, there is a precedence, right? Like we have seen what happened in Central Asia, in Chechnya in the past, and also attempts to destabilize Western China or Xinjiang, let's say, in the autonomous region of Xinjiang through the TYP. So do you see that this TYP could be, because there are reports them sending to Afghanistan, like what's the plan? Are they going to target the Central Asia or the spheres of influence of China through this TYP?
I'm really not sure. I think that there are still many in Syria, and many who folded into the Jolani regime who don't support the Jolani regime and who are really angry at Jolani for the concessions he's made and the deals he's made with Israel and even Turkey to some extent. I think in Syria, at least, I think that they're going to continue to be a problem. They're probably going to challenge Jolani's authority at some point if there are enough of them and if they have enough power to. I mean, that's a constant rumor of people targeting Jolani or trying to target Jolani. So I think it's really a matter of time before he either actively kills more of these people or enough of them rise up against him to do something.
In your reporting or your sources, was he targeted, Jolani, when he disappeared for 5 days and then he came back with some makeup on his face, or that was just a rumor?
According to the former SNA and government sources I know, they say no. But according to the Kurdish sources, they say it was a late targeting. Like he was slightly injured. I'm honestly leaning towards no. I don't think he was actually injured.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
these TYP militants in Idlib, how big are they? Are they 5,000 fighters or more?
I think that they're less than that. And they were, even before Jolani took control of Syria, they were sort of subjugated to certain parts of Idlib and not really allowed to mingle with the greater HTS. And I think that was like a precursor to Jolani becoming the great pragmatic statesman that he is now. So I don't think that there are that many. And I think a lot of them were parts of other groups that Jolani sort of neutralized. And
Yeah.
neutralized not because they're terrorists, but because they were a threat to his power.
Yes.
But probably not as many as estimates say, but there are enough of them.
Final question, Lindsey, and this is, you mentioned Jolani is being pragmatic. And
Sarcastically.
Half
sarcastically.
Was he pragmatic all the time that we know this guy in the past 14 years? And when I mean pragmatic, like changing his colors all the time anyways. Like it's a stark change, even for the people who fought for him. And I believe that many people who fought for him, they believed in him. They believed in the cause. It's not like those people were mercenaries. They believed in the cause. Who would put a suicide vest on his chest and go and blow up himself for money? No one, right? Let's agree on that. And thousands of them did that, including by the other day you reported this Sheikh al-Muhaisni. He was crossing the river in Raqqa. And this guy is now receiving honorary PhD in Syria. Meanwhile, he used to dress young boys, 17, 18 years old boys, suicide vests, and send them for terrorist attacks. Now that the people who fought...
Not only that, he openly recruited children as young as 15, openly. Like there was a Idlib and Turkish occupied wide campaign in Syria. And this is after they were HTS. This is when Jolani was already starting to try to rebrand. Muhesni was actively recruiting children. It's insane.
But if you are someone who fought for HTS and before that for Al-Nusra, and now you see Jolani is basically, it's not even a U-turn. I don't know how to describe this thing. It's like, it's shocking, right? If you're a fighter and Jolani said after Damascus, we are going to Jerusalem. And people believed him. They fought for him. They died for him. And now he wears like, not even like, the as we say, the suit is not Western. The tie is Western, right? The suit you can wear in the Middle East. The Iranians wear it, for example, but they don't wear a tie. But this guy comes, everything that is in the West, he mimics it completely. The rhetoric, the multiculturalism, the almost talking about LGBT stuff. Like you watch his videos a few years ago. The guy says the Alawites are not Muslims and they either join us or we fight them. And then he comes to power and says exactly the opposite. Like, what is this? This guy was an asset all this time and pretending to be someone and then changed, or this is pragmatism?
I mean, I think it's probably pragmatism. And I think maybe he was a true believer that became an asset. And it's actually been pretty slow, because if you look back to like 2014, when they were really hardcore Al-Qaeda, to 2016, when he announced that he split from Al-Qaeda, which, again, I was kidnapped by Al-Qaeda by Nusra when that happened. They were celebrating to me, like, oh, it's a great thing we announced that we split from Al-Qaeda today. Great, yes. And then from there, it was more and more. And different iterations. There was Jabhat Fateh al-Sham, and then they became HTS, and more propaganda and more positive propaganda. And at some point in 2020, they stopped the suicide bombings, although there are still videos with Abu Qasra, who is currently the Syrian defense minister, praising a guy who just said that he was putting on a suicide vest to go kill Nusayri's Alawites. I think it was a slow burn transition to what he is today. And I think that he was probably pushed many steps of the way. We've seen Robert Ford talk about rebranding him. There were like scholars for Atlantic Council who spent great deals of time in Idlib in like 2020, 2021. And this is when it was still very Idlib, very HTS, very dangerous. So it's almost like a sort of begrudgingly, he's gone along with it. I don't think that I think he's still at heart a true believer, but he's sold his soul and become a pragmatist.
when he tasted some authority and power in the country, people change, as they say, when they come to power. What they preach before coming to power is different afterwards. I know I said this is the last question, but this is something that I have to ask you, and that is Jolani and Israel. His supporters say that this is not the right time to fight Israel. We have to unify the country. We have to embolden ourselves. And once we are in a position to have a full control over the country and our resources, then that's the time to fight against Israel. And they don't believe that Jolani will normalize ties with Israel. And this is all a 5D chess now playing with Israel. The talks, the office that Israel will open in Damascus to coordinate on an intelligence level. Israel imposed 60-kilometer demilitarized zone inside Syria, have de facto autonomy over the Druze of Sweda, have taken over Mount Hermon. Jolani has given up on the Golan Heights. He has kicked out all the Palestinian factions. He cut the supply chains for Hezbollah. I mean, what could this guy do more for his people to believe or to start believing that he is probably serving Israel and not really going to fight Israel?
And not only that, as we said before, really he has no autonomy. He doesn't have the power to do anything without a million different green lights. And the biggest one would be Turkey. Turkey's not going to support an attack on Israel. Turkey's going to theatrically pretend that it's fighting Israel and continue to send Israel more than half of its gas from Azerbaijan and continue to send concrete and steel and everything that they need to continue their wars. So it's just nonsense. Yeah. Jolani, even if he wanted to, he'll never have the autonomy to attack Israel. It's just never going to happen. It's just going to be more normalization.
And he would be removed in 1 day, in less than 1 day. If he attacks Israel, he will be completely annihilated, the same way Israel has annihilated a lot of other hostile actors. And that is that begs the question: when Jolani was riding on a motorcycle from Aleppo to Damascus, no drones saw him. Not American, not Russian, not Israeli. Everybody was blind, and this guy was just driving all the way 400 kilometers to Damascus. What a big shit show. Sorry.
Just doing so many interviews with Western media while he has a $10 million bounty on his head. Like, there he is. Totally absurd.
Thank you so much, really, for your contribution, for your insight. I really appreciate you guys. Go also hit follow for Lindsey on her X account. You can see her name is already written on the screen, Lindsey Snell. I will also put her X account link in the description below. She's reporting also about what is going on now in northeast Syria with the Kurds, the Jolani invasion, let's say, and also she also focuses on Armenia and Azerbaijan. So if you're interested in these topics, make sure to follow her. Thank you so much, Lindsey, for coming again to Syriana Analysis, and thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to today's live stream. I appreciate you all, whether you watch this on YouTube or on Rumble. I wish you peace be upon you and upon your families. Salam.